During my college life, I earned 475,000 pesos. No, it is not from any of my stocks, and no, it is not from any of my startups. In today's video, I will be sharing to you how I got there, and more importantly, how you can also get there. We will be teaching you the core skills that might enable you to, number 1, potentially earn 500,000 pesos, 2, land high-paying jobs, and number 3, become AI-proof. But before that, a quick introduction about me. I am Jemarkable, a 9-time business case competition champion with A-level experiences from the number 1 firms and the number 1 universities, and I make more lives Jemarkable.
Short answer, my teams earned 500,000 pesos through case competitions.
So what are case competitions? These are competitions wherein corporations give CEO-level problems that they themselves could not solve. So there are 3 examples that I might give to you. Number 1 is FMCG and plastics. Number 2 is insurance. And number 3 is e-commerce and electronics. So for FMCG and plastics, we all know that fast-moving consumer goods, the ones that sell lotion, shampoo whatsoever, they produce plastics a lot. So how can they make sure that they both earn a profit and reduce their plastic emission or plastic usage? So that's one problem. Another problem is insurance. How can a certain insurance company make more Filipinos choose a healthier, longer, and better lives? So that's a second example. A third example could be an e-commerce company trying to increase their sales in the electronics category during the pandemic. So for example, a consumer who wants to buy a laptop or a gadget might want to have a touch and a feel of their gadgets, a high price item, even before they purchase the item. But how can they do that with the online setup and the pandemic setup? Those are some of the problems that you might be solving if you want to join case competitions. So for the timeline, it could be in the form of 3 months, 2 months, 2 weeks, or even 24 hours to crack a case. And it culminates in a presentation of a slide or any video in front of C-suite executives, including the Chief Executive Officer, Chief Marketing Officer, and other business unit heads. And in return, they might be giving you prizes in the form of 20,000 pesos, 50,000 pesos, or even 100,000 pesos from my experience. But then you might question, what if I don't have time for these kinds of case competitions? I'm only focusing on my academics. I don't have time for this. But lucky you, this video can still teach you the core concepts that you can apply not just when you join these competitions, but also in your entire life.
Every day, late at night, not okay. All I want, and I pray, all I need are some better days.
Without further ado, this is it. Number 1, problem-solving skills. Number 2, communication skills. And number 3, the growth mindset. If we were to liken you in a car, the problem-solving skills would most likely be the engine or the neural network. The communication skills would be the packaging or the outer layer, how it sounds, how it evokes the non-verbal and the verbal cues to the outside world. And the growth mindset would be the fuel that empowers both the problem-solving skills as well as your communication skills. Let's get into it. So why are these important? In one of our previous cases, the judges from an FMCG senior leadership team praised us how we understood the entire coffee value chain, both from the consumer standpoint all the way to the supplier standpoint, and propose a holistic solution that encapsulates the shared goals and missions of the different stakeholders and package it into a well-thought-out, well-structured solution. Second, if you are into a management training programs, part of the recruitment process would be case simulations or case interviews. It could be in the form of you and a senior leadership person solving a case together in a 30-minute to 60-minute setup. Or it could also be in the form of you being thrown into a boardroom with a group of 5 or 4 or 5 people solving together a case on strategy, marketing, finance, whatever you are applying into, and it culminates into a presentation to the senior leadership team, and they will be testing how you break down your problem, how you propose a solution that both efficiently and effectively solves the problem, as well as how you can answer curveball questions. Third, if you're also into a management consultant position, the ones that are earning 100,000 pesos at least a month, then part of the way they test is also through case simulation, case interviews. So similarly, they will test you across different industries, across different functions, different problems in a 30-minute or 60-minute case interview with some senior leadership person also. And no, this is not an invitation for you to go into the management consulting route, because there are pros and cons of having that lifestyle. But if you are not in any of the people or the situations that I've talked about, at some point in your life, I know that you will be in a leadership position, and you need to break down a certain problem, you need to propose certain solutions and communicate those solutions to both your internal and external stakeholders, and that will be what I am about to teach you in this video. First would be the problem-solving skills, and this would be about knowing the right problem to solve, as well as knowing the most effective and efficient way to solve that problem. Although there are many frameworks that you can use, I will be sharing to you in this video quickly the 3 of my favorite frameworks. Number 1 would be the MECE framework, the MECE Principle, the 80-20 principle, as well as the 5 whys framework. For the MECE Principle, it is about thinking in buckets and making sure that those buckets are mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. Mutually exclusive means that the buckets don't overlap, while collectively exhaustive means that you've thought of all the relevant buckets, the relevant things are there, the most important things are there. So, how do you use it? For example, when you're asked by your friend on how's the Korean entertainment industry, instead of just answering with a simple answer of, oh, they're doing pretty well, it's about the K-pop guys getting some more streaming, or getting more fandom across Southeast Asia and even in Europe as well as in America. Instead of just saying that, you can structure your answer in terms of the different buckets within the Korean entertainment industry. You can think about it in terms of music, TV, and then film. So for example, I would answer that with for the K-pop industry, for the Korean entertainment industry, the music sector is dominated by K-pop groups X, Y, and Z. The film section is dominated by X, Y, and Z, and the TV sector is dominated by X, Y, and Z. So that's a more structured way of answering a certain problem. Another way of using the MECE framework is in non-business aspects. For example, in science aspects. And for example, in my case, I've used it when I had a doctor's diagnosis. So for example, in my case, I had a high SGPT, SGOT come early 2023. And I looked up in Google, there are actually just 2 main sources of that. Either it's liver cirrhosis or a fatty liver. And usually if it's liver cirrhosis, it's caused by high consumption of alcohol. And because I'm not consuming that much of alcohol, then probably it's it's in the second case. So that's another way of using the MECE framework, but in other disciplines. Another way to use the MECE framework is on formulating your solutions. For example, when you are asked on, oh, Jemar, how can I increase my savings, my personal finance savings? Then MECE answer could be, it could be in either increasing your earnings or decreasing your costs. By increasing your earnings, it means getting a higher salary or getting more side hustles, etc., etc. While decreasing costs would mean cutting down your rent, cutting down your subscription, your other food utilities, and other consumption materials. So that's the first framework, the MECE Principle framework. The second framework is the 80-20 principle. The main premise is that 80% of the output is from 20% of the input, or 80% of whatever the results would be comes from 20% of the effort that you put into it. So this framework helps you in prioritizing what tasks need to be done first in order to still achieve the most of the goal, most of the KPI or whatever you're trying to do. So it achieves focus and prioritization. Let's take, for example, the case of the question of how can you make the most out of your college experience? You break that down first into MECE buckets that could be academics, extracurriculars, and under extracurriculars that would be internships, student leaderships, case competitions, and other competitions, as well as some other stuff. So an 80-20 way of looking at it would be what's the 20% of the activities that can yield to 80% of the results. If we are eyeing for a full-time job after college that are meeting some metrics 1, 2, and 3, then potentially you could reprioritize this buckets into internships first, and then academics, and then student leadership, as well as case competitions. Why? Because if you are doing internships, you can convert it full-time into a full-time position, and eventually later on that would be easier. You still achieved your job, the job to be done, with the minimal effort, with the least effort. So that's 80-20. Another example is on crafting solutions on marketing campaigns. 80-20 can also be a way of thinking what's the one thing that when we do it, it will spark a positive flywheel effect and have a ripple effect to the other things. In other words, it's the tide that lifts all boats together, right? For example, you've done your research and you found out that having a TikTok craze can actually be the start or the signal of a flywheel effect. Why? Because having a viral sound that people can dance into, it could ripple effect into their Twitter, or they tweet about it. It could ripple into their Instagram stories and even Facebook posts. It could even be picked up by media agencies, and you can get free paid media without spending that much. And that all started with just one TikTok craze. So that's just one example of how to use the 80-20 principle. Last example is on the personal finance problem. So what's the 80-20 way of doing it? Let's say, you're either the MECE answer is you're gonna increase your profits or you increase your revenues or decrease your costs, right? When you're doubling down on any of those buckets, you prioritize which of them makes the most impact. For example, it's getting higher revenues that can actually lead to higher net profits. What it means is that the 20% of the input that yields to 80% of the desired output is getting a high-paying salary. Or another way to look at it would be at the expenses side of things. So what's the biggest driver of your expenses? Let's say 40% of your expenses come from your rent, and 40% of your expenses come from your food, etc., etc. So you attack the cost minimization in descending order of importance. You attack the cutting down of the rent first. For example, you trim down a 35,000 rent to, let's say, 10,000 per month rent. Or maybe you can decrease your food from 20,000 per month of food to, let's say, 5 to 10,000 worth of food per month, etc., etc. So that's another way to look at 80-20 principle and apply it in whatever problem you're trying to solve. Next, last principle is the 5 whys framework. It's just a simple series of asking why. So for example, in the case of our BSP problem, the central bank problem, how can they promote digital financial services, aka the GCash of the world, the Maya, BDO, Metrobank, PPI, etc., etc. Everything digital, and given the constraints of the pandemic. So we look at it at the lens of the consumer or the actual persona. Why is it that people don't switch to digital finance yet? That's the first why. It could be because they think of it as a scam. Then you ask another why. Because all my friends aren't using it yet. And another answer would be, I am not using digital financial services because when I go to the markets, to the wet market, to the stores, in the palenques, whatsoever, they only accept cash and not digital wallets. So another layer of why would be, from the perspective of the sellers, they're getting payments in cash and they still haven't created their digital seller wallet because all their consumers are also paying in cash. Like, it's a chicken and egg problem. So when you've reached that point wherein you can no longer ask another why, then you have already gained a sufficient level of depth of your problem. So our refined problem statement would be, how can we target both the consumers and the sellers to switch to digital financial services? So we attack them all together. That's also another approach. So in summary, the 5 whys framework is a way for you to refine your problem statement. And yeah, that's about it for the problem solving skills. Next is for communication skills. We think about number 1, the substance or the content or what you're going to talk about. And number 2, how you're going to tell it. So for the number 1, the content, there's usually a structure and desired format for whatever we're trying to present. And it's usually in the form of an intro, body, and a conclusion. For the second one, we think about it in terms of the elements of persuasion, aka logos, pathos, and ethos. And we'll talk about it later on. Second, for the communication skills, we're gonna tell you about number 1, what you are gonna talk about or the substance of your content. And number 2 is how you are gonna present it or the 3 elements of persuasion. So firstly, on the substance of your content, we're gonna talk about the usual storyline. It goes with the sequence of a hook, a body, and a conclusion, or an intro, body, and conclusion. Usually in the intro, you're gonna use a hook that can get the interest of your audience. It could be in the form of a rhetorical question, a contrast lead, or even a gap analysis. An example of gap analysis would be you state where you are now, you state where you are leading towards, and then what's stopping you from getting there. That could also be an intro. Second would be the body or the story, the main content. For business case competitions, it's usually problem analysis. You present a solution in a short summary. You present the solution in full. Then you present some plans for your marketing, your financial statements, as well as your risks and mitigation. There are other structures for other formats, and we'll talk about it later on in future videos. For the body, you're gonna use different kinds of frameworks or storylines depending on who you are talking to. For example, in the case of a business case competition, we're gonna start with the problem analysis, a solution in a nutshell. You present the solution in a nutshell, then you present the solution in full. You present eventually the marketing plan, the financial plan, as well as the risks and mitigation of those risks. On the other hand, if you're presenting a scientific research, you follow whatever the format is prescribed. Whatever is the prescribed format. You serve the intro, RRL, methodology, results, conclusion, etc., etc. So if there's a recommended format, it's usually the case of you just follow the recommended one, especially in the academic or work setup. Just some reminders is to follow the principle of brevity or conciseness, aka if you can tell a thought in 60 words, tell it in 60 words versus 100 words, so brevity. Next would be show, don't tell. It's a matter of being descriptive enough, or it's a matter of using visuals or using descriptive words to show the story, not just tell the story, right? And for the conclusion, we always end with a bang. And usually in my case competitions, we mirror the slogans of the case companies. For example, we find ways. Like we tweak that statement into we are team CBA and we always find ways, etc., etc. You can see this example in the way Pia Wurtzbach answered her Miss Universe question. Like, she wants to tell the world, the universe rather, that she is confidently beautiful with a heart. Whereas Miss Universe's tagline is confidently beautiful. So what she did was to use the mission statement or the brand element of the company and use it as her extra. And that's a way to end your statement with a bang. Next would be for the rhetorical device, or the art of persuasion, the way you present your solution, the how of things. So usually we consider three main elements: logos, ethos, and pathos. Let's start with logos. It's logic. Then pathos, it's about emotion, and ethos, it's about credibility. Let's start with examples. When you use logic, it could be with the use of statements like, this is the best smartphone camera in the market. Another could be, you need to scale to Vietnam over the Philippines because of X, Y, and Z, which are the logical reasons. Another would be telling your crush the objective reasons why he or she would choose you. Next would be pathos or emotions. If you've seen the Angkas billboard ads along EDSA, it's telling about the stories and narratives of the Angkas riders, that every ride you have, you're helping their lives. And that's appeal to emotions. For example, because you availed of their ride-hailing services, you enable livelihoods. Like you've enabled the livelihood of a single parent who recently graduated about 3 kids, etc. Another example is on using the story of your brand or your company and how you're impacting the lives of people. That's the appeal to emotion or pathos. The third would be ethos, which is appeal to authority or credibility. An example would be if you're pitching your startup, at the end of the pitch, you share the credentials of your team. Let's say you're pitching an AI startup, you can say 5 years of experience in AI in different companies that are leading the space in the US, etc., etc. So that's pathos, ethos, and logos, the three elements of rhetoric or persuasion, which can help you convince the audience even more on what you're trying to achieve. What we've just talked about are things that you need to consider in terms of your content and the way you're trying to present your statements. Next would be the growth mindset. As I've said, it's the fuel that empowers both your problem-solving skills and your communication skills. Without it, you wouldn't be able to expand your horizon. And we will use growth mindset in the perspective of, number 1, growing your knowledge. Number 2, growing your circle, and number 3, growing your potential. In growing your knowledge, we'll draw inspiration from one of my summa cum laude mentors who's now teaching accountancy in UP Diliman. He said that he always tries to learn beyond whatever is given by his professors. So I think in that case, you're not just satisfied with whatever is given to you. You're always craving for more. And that's a good kind of mindset in order to be prepared for the wild world, especially if you're gonna enter a corporate world. Second is to grow your circle. There are many opportunities to grow and network. And for example, small activities like having dinners with some friends or joining some competitions, some boot camps, even having an exchange experience, summer exchange. Those are opportunities for you to grow your circle. And who knows, these people could be your future teammates or even future clients, future suppliers, future business partners, etc. Lastly, grow your potential. Every case competition is a learning opportunity. And even if you lose, it's still a learning experience. Every small talk with someone, be it the jeepney driver or let's say the tricycle riders, etc., it's an opportunity for growth. Like, what if you learn about life in Tondo, or what if you learn about the mechanics of a parachute by just talking to your aviation service provider, etc. So everything is a stepping stone towards a better you, towards a better thinking, towards a better way of communicating. So, and that all starts with the growth mindset. One more thing for you to note is the interplay of everything that I've talked about. For example, MECE and 80/20 could lead to better ethos. When you talk in terms of mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive buckets, and you prioritize it in 80/20 format, you can actually sound smart, and that could increase your credibility or your ethos. And the next time you're gonna talk about anything, people might be listening to you because you have established that you are a great communicator and a great thinker. Another is when you do Q&As, you're able to think in terms of the main buckets and prioritize it in terms of 80/20, even when the question is a curveball question. By using these frameworks and by using the ideal way of communicating things, you'll become a better Q&A person, interviewee. Next would be when you have 24 hours to do a presentation, you use 80/20 to prioritize what's the biggest chunk of the work that still leads to the ideal output to be done. Like, you prioritize your time better through 80/20. And last example is when you do job interviews. Like, when you introduce yourself, ideally you introduce it in the MECE format. For example, you say that I am Jemar, I am number 1, a problem solver. 2, I have strong leadership skills. And number 3, I know how to build connections. So why is this MECE? It shows who I am as a member, aka how I am as a problem solver. Then number 2 is who I am as a leader. The number 3 is who I am outside work. Of course, we don't just tell the 1, 2, 3. You also dig deep into the details after stating your summary. So that's usually how you use MECE. You state the summary. I am X, Y, Z, and then I am X because blank, I am Y because blank, and I am Z because blank. So those are the ways that these things have an interplay. And these are the things that can make your life better, make your career better. So in summary, what we've just told you are number 1, problem-solving skills, which is composed of 3 frameworks: MECE Principle, 80/20 Principle, and the 5 Whys Principle. And these could lead you to the right problem and to the most efficient and effective way to solve that problem. Next would be for communication skills. We have 2 things. Number 1 is for the substance. You think about the hook, the body, and then the conclusion. While for the how, you think about the ethos, pathos, and logos. You appeal to the brains or the logic, you appeal to the emotions or to the heart, and then you appeal to authority or credibility. To cut everything in short, what I just told you are all frameworks. The MECE framework, the 80-20 framework, the 5 whys framework, the framework for outlining a story, a framework for rhetoric and persuasion. In short, thinking and communicating in frameworks. I think by now, if you have reached the end of this video, you might be interested to doubling down your problem-solving skills. And in this upcoming video, we will talk about small habits and quick wins in your life and how you can start honing, improving your problem-solving skill set. See you in the next video and stay Jemarkable, everyone.